Okay. Barking dogs. It's always handy when you're recording. Anyway. I think that's recording. Sorry folks, I'm just getting things set up. Every time I do this, for some reason I don't see all the things I'm supposed to see, so I have to reset stuff in order to see YouTube live controls. That's it. Select stream. Excellent. Okay, just lets me know that we're recording. Okay. Alrighty. It's been a little while since I recorded one of these, but I'm going to keep going with the live stream format for these ones on the Spitfire because we've already started that model, so we'll keep going that way. So let's give you an update on the plane. So here's the kit, and last time I recorded a video, I had put some primer on it, and there were a few little blemishes and things that needed doing, so I've gone ahead and done a little bit of sanding, a little bit of scribing in some spots, not too much, and this is where we're up to. And it didn't go too badly really. It has had a second coat of primer put on it, so I thought I'd just take a couple of minutes to explain that and also just the process. So this Airfix kit is very atypical, I think, of these new generation Airfix kits. They're not what I would call weekend kits. They're quite complex and they do take some time, and there's the main things in this kit that aren't right because I was trying to rush it through for that 48-hour build, and that's it. But one of the things that's interesting about them is they've all got this slightly unconventional build sequence, and it sort of throws you off a bit. But once you put it all together, the actual finished model, yeah, it looks right. It's definitely, looks like a Spitfire. No question about that. So it all comes together if you take your time. These aren't kits that I would suggest you build if you are someone that just likes to get through the building part as quickly as possible, so you can have fun with the painting and weathering, because these new CAD sort of designed Airfix kits don't appreciate that kind of work. Other thing I could say, I think with a fair degree of authority, is this kit is clearly done by the same, well, designed by the same person that designed the Airfix Hurricane kit, which I built earlier. There's just a lot of similarities in the way things go together. This one doesn't feel as refined and as easy to put together, so I suspect this might have been an earlier kit that this particular designer worked on. But once you get it there, it's all good. I did have one little problem, which is down here. You can see where I've sanded it. That was to do with too much glue, which was from trying to get this thing done in 48 hours. And I've also accidentally broken off the very end of the tip when I was trying to sand it. And again, that's because I glued these tips on really quickly. Normally I would have taken my time, made sure they all fitted nicely. And that's the secret of this kit if you're going to build it, by the way. Take your time. Don't do this in a rush or when you're in a bad mood or something. Make sure that you do it slowly and methodically. And when you do that, you'll end up with a pretty decent kit at the end of it. Now, primer. Once I put the primer on, I had to do a little bit of sanding and touch up, and I've done different spots. I wanted to talk about the primer. So I had been starting out by using this primer, which is AK Interactive's Primer and Microfiller. Quite a nice primer. It's a lacquer-based one. And I was using that because, again, that 48-hour time frame, I had to sort of move fairly quickly. But I typically don't use lacquer primers unless I really need to. In fact, well, I don't use a lot of lacquer paints, really. Majority of paints I've got are acrylics. I do have lacquers, obviously, like the Itaka paint. But I don't use them all the time. So anyway, I've gone ahead and used it on this. Now, what have I done that's a bit different with this kit? Once I'd done it and I'd done some sanding, I needed to touch up some of the primer. So it was two things I did. I thought it was a good opportunity to try out this primer, which is VMS No Peel. This is a brand new primer that's out on the market from VMS. I've got quite a few VMS products in the stash. Generally speaking, I'm happy with them. Some of them are excellent. A couple of them are a bit ordinary. It's a little bit hit and miss, but overall, their product range is extremely good. This stuff is excellent. This is a acrylic type primer, but it's already pre-thinned. It's quite thin, straight out of the bottle. Easy to use, sprayed beautifully, dried nicely. No complaints at all. And that's what I've put over the top of this in a few places. So it's had a light coat over the whole model, basically, just to sort of touch things up here and there. Needed to be done. And the only other thing I've done is I've used this 1000 grit sponge, which is fairly worn. And I just went over the model and sanded down parts of it just to make sure it's as smooth as possible, because while this I think gave a nice smooth enough finish, the microfiller, and the clues in the name there, it says primer and microfiller. So it's good at filling some small gaps and things, but it can leave a little bit of a slight textured or pebbly finish. And when you're going to be using paints fairly well thinned, that sort of shows through. So I decided just to give the whole model a light coat. The other thing is, because we're not doing the 24-hour build, I've got a few more options as far as paints for the final camouflage, and so I've just decided to use up some of my acrylic paints that I've got sitting around that are getting a bit old now, and yeah, the Ataka paints will work fine. It's just I happen to have these, so I thought I'll use them up. So this is the colour for the underneath the aircraft, which is the sort of the medium grey. This one is actually a little bit lighter. Not much, but a little bit lighter than the Ataka. I'm looking at the only photo I can find of this particular aircraft. I think that's probably appropriate for this kit. But even if it's not, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to be weathering it, so it's going to get darkened anyway, so having a little bit lighter grade as a base is fine. The other paint I'm going to be using on the top is going to be this one, which is Life Colours Ocean Grey. And then for the green, I'm going to stick with the Ataka lacquer, because that's the only green, that dark olive, that dark green the RAF used. It's the only one I've got. Now, normally you don't mix lacquers and acrylics. You probably know this if you've done any house painting. It's not a good recipe. But typically on these sort of models, if you take your time, you're not using gallons of the stuff, it will work fine. So I'm not too worried about that. So the next step for this plane is going to be to put the light grey underneath and get that sort of weathered a little bit, at least to start on that. And then I can sort of worry about the top. I can look at the canopy and other things. So tonight really is just about the painting for the underneath. I guess the other thing I want to mention, I'm going to be using, I've got Mr. Hobby thinner. I just decanted in these smaller bottles because it's easier to work with. I just thought I'd mention that I typically use this with all my acrylic thinners. This is, what brand is it again? Liquitex, that's right. Liquitex Flow Aid. So this is designed to reduce or slow down the drying time for the paints. And I find this works well as an additive to reduce the tip dry you get with acrylic paints when you're spraying them. So I put about 5% of that in a bottle like this, and then the rest of it is just the thinner, that particular manufacturer's thinner. So I've done that with the Mr. Hobby, and I've also got the Life Colour thinner here as well, and I've done the same thing there. And you can see I've been put a note on there, 5 drops per 100 millilitres, so that's what I'm doing as a formula with this stuff. When I was first getting back in the hobby, I bought all different brands of paints, and I bought all the appropriate thinners because I thought that was the safest way to go, and I think it is. But that's why you'll see me using different brands of thinners, because I happen to have them. But as I exhaust them, I'm not replacing them. I'm just going to either use one of the other brands and just solder on sort of thing, because honestly I've got enough acrylic thinners to last me a lifetime and then some. So it's not something I'll be buying anytime soon. Alright, so let's have a look at this paint. This paint is quite old, and by quite old I mean it's probably 2 to 3 decades, maybe 30 years, wouldn't surprise me. It's 30 years old. So I suppose we should just check to see that it's actually still good. And it is. This paint lasts really, really well. So yeah, I'm thinking this is probably sometime in the mid-1990s this paint would have been bought. And because it's an older paint, I just thought, well, I might as well start using it up, hey? That's, I don't need to leave it sitting for another 30 years. So I've got my thinners here. I'm just going to eyeball this and start thinning it down a little bit in the bottle before we even get to mixing it for the airbrushing. Mr. Hobby paints, or Aquas paints they're sometimes called, are really nice acrylic paints. They work very well. Colours are nice. They're just they've been around for ages. Been around as long as the Tamiya's in Australia at least. But they have a much more extensive range of colours. And they also make very nice lacquer paints as well, which is the Mr. Colour range, which is their lacquer range. And that's extremely good as well. So, you know, honestly, if I had a hobby store near me and this is all they stocked, that would be just fine. I'd have all the colours I need and the paint quality is excellent. Alright, I don't typically mix my paints in the actual airbrush. I always like to mix it separately. It also gives me a chance to look at the consistency of the paint, see if there's any problems with it, because I have got quite a few old paints. And if you gum up the paint, or the paint's just not behaving, putting in the airbrush just means you're setting yourself up for lots and lots of cleaning. So I prefer to just mix the paint in the cup first, and then I can see what I'm up for. So, just for the sake of this video, I'll actually measure this. Normally I'd eyeball it, but we'll just see how we go. 1, 2, 3, about 10. It's about 40 drops. I still did eyeball it a bit, sorry, can't help myself. I don't always mix 50-50, but with this paint, it's a good place to start. These little bottles also put a slightly smaller drop than you would get if you just used some of your standard sort of dropper bottles, which I actually prefer, and then I just it sort of gets it close to where I want it, and then I can just sort of dial it in from there. And you can see for 30-year-old paint, this stuff is mixing just fine. Still a little bit thick, but what I'm going to add to it, because I'm going to be putting multiple shades on and lightening things and stuff, I'm going to just add a couple of drops of the Vallejo airbrush flow improver on top of what's already in there, because I know I'm going to need it. I could have used that flow 8 as well. I showed you a little bit earlier. And so now I can just sort of dial this in. I've got plenty of paint in that bottle, which is good, so I'm not going to run out halfway through painting the Spitfire. It's probably a good spot to start, I think. So, alright. Now, I don't know if that's going to be enough paint, to be honest. I don't think it is. I might have to add some more paint before we go into the spray booth. Don't forget, before you put the lids on, always take the paint off the edges of the bottle to try and get a better paint seal. Or bottle, top seal, whatever. This paint is a bit like Tamiya paint. It's fairly tolerant of thinning ratios, which is one of the reasons why I think a lot of modelers like Tamiya stuff. It just doesn't behaves quite well even if you thin it to various degrees. And this stuff's pretty similar. Alrighty, let's see if we can swap cameras and show you the spray booth. And fire her up. This is my new water one. Okay, so swap cameras. There we go. This is a new waterfall type one, which I love this spray booth. I seriously love this spray booth. I haven't used it for a few weeks, but with that, up she goes, no problem. Lovely. And it does a great job of getting the paint and the smell, even without the exhaust fans going or the back fan you're going flat chat, particularly with these acrylic paints that I'm working with tonight. Another thing I've done since the last video is I've cleaned the airbrush. There's a thought. So we should be okay with paints and airbrushes tonight, I hope. I was fighting a lot of clogging when I was trying to do the 48-hour build. That's very nice. Drop the pressure down a bit now. I'll start with that and see how we go. So down about 18 PSI. And I'll just put the plane across and then we'll change the camera angle a bit for you. So I'm going to freehand this because I'm going to mask up once I've got the base colour on the underneath there. Let's see if I can change the angle here for you. It's all stuff you don't normally see because I edit this out. The compressor I'm using has got a two compressor engines, or whatever you want to call them. I don't have a tank. Basically the line for the airbrush is where all the air is, so you'll hear the compressor cut in quite a bit. Let's just have a quick go at seeing what it sprays like. I don't know if you can see that because it's grey on grey, but it turns out. Turns out the primer's not that far removed from the final colour. I think you can still see that. You can see there's a bit of a differentiation there. And you see it sprays on very nicely. For those wondering what the airbrush is, this is the Krios PS289. It's a 3.5 millimetre needle. It sprays almost identical to the Iwata HPCS. But at least at the moment on Amazon I can get this for a third of the price. And the airbrush is made in Japan. It doesn't have quite as nice a finish as the Iwata, but I will take a bet that this is made in exactly the same factory because the parts are basically interchangeable. Right now this is using an Iwata needle because I needed a new needle for it a few weeks ago. A bit hard on my airbrushes, so I tend to end up having to buy spare parts for them. hopefully you can see there is for a acrylic paint. Sprays very nicely. So there you go, there's one wing done. And there's the primer on the other side. Very similar colours. This one's just got a little bit more of a light grey to it, I guess. Now obviously it'll take overnight for it to dry thoroughly, but if you look at the back there you can already see that that's starting to go off. So it will be dry enough by the time I finish doing underneath here to lighten the paint and do a little bit of post shading, I think they call it. One question mark I've had with the underneath the aircraft is the wheel wells, which are quite nicely detailed on this kit. I think the standard response is that they were painted in the grey-green colours, same as the interior of the aircraft, but at least some of these were painted in, or weren't painted, were an aluminium finish. And so the instructions themselves for the kit suggest these should be aluminium. And I couldn't find a definitive answer. It seems to vary between aircraft. I found a reference that some of the United States squadrons that were using the Spitfires at one point used this particular model. Theirs had aluminium, whereas others didn't. So I was like, well, I don't think Super Marine was making any special provisions for the US. So I would suggest to me that depending on paint supplies and production needs or whatever, they did vary as to whether or not they got paint put on them. Okay, that tip has still got a little bit of a crack, it's just appeared, which is really annoying. I'll have to fix that up later. But basically, that's the first coat done. So as far as the weathering goes, going to keep it nice and simple. Just a little bit of variation in the panel colours, and I'll do some oil paints later with it as well. So I just need a paint to lighten it with. So I've got some old Ammo MIG matte white here. It's just handy because it's in a dropper bottle. I've already mixed it, so hopefully it should work. It a little bit. Yep, that's done it. Okay, and now we're going to put a little bit more thinners in. And the other thing I'm going to use, which I didn't introduce earlier, if I can find the bottle, there we go. I'm going to use a bit of this. This is called Transparenter. It's a Ammo MIG product, and I use this quite a bit in German tanks and stuff, particularly the dark grey ones. But basically this is like I don't know, how would you put it? This is the paint without the actual pigment. So this is just like the, whatever you want to call it, not the thinners, it's the other part of the paint. It's not the actual pigment. you add this, I won't add too much. What it does basically is it gives some opacity to the acrylic paint, and so it's a really good material to use if you are doing military subjects like tanks, where you've got black and white primer, or you do base coating, you know, where you go nuts painting all the panel lines and stuff before you put the final colour on. Rather than thinning your paint to buggery and potentially having your paint run everywhere, you put about 20% of this stuff in your acrylic paint, and it will still spray and behave like normal paint, but you'll find that it's opaque, and you can then just apply as much or as little as you want, and it works quite well. In fact, it works very well. There is such a thing for lacquer paints too, which I'll have to find. I've got a bottle of it somewhere. Most people with lacquer paints just thin the paint because it's a little bit, lacquer paint's more tolerant of being thinned down. I'm just emptying out the airbrush. Okay, so now we have to dial in the airbrush a bit more carefully now. So I'm just dropping the paint, the air pressure down a little bit on the airbrush, seeing what kind of paint flow I'm getting. And what I'm going to do, because I don't really want to ruin that finish, is I'm going to test it on the top. And if it works, then I'll flip the plane up. Yep, no, that's controllable. Okay, see how we go. This turns out not to be light enough, which I've got a feeling it isn't. Probably needs to be a bit lighter. I'll just go and mix up some more. Looks good, just not quite dark enough. So that was 4. We'll try another 4. No, we'll try 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just a little bit more thinners. Maybe 1 drop of transparent for good measure. Okay. I used to get paint on my fingers, which is always handy. Right, let's try that and see if that's a bit lighter. Trying to be accurate here. By any stretch of the imagination, I'm just trying to get a little bit of colour variation. it's even showing up on camera. I think that's too subtle. It is there, but I don't think you're seeing it. And I've got a feeling once I put varnish on, you definitely won't see it. So we're going to have to do a bit more lighting. Okay. Oops. My paint has got stuck. The white's got stuck. Let's try that. It definitely should lighten it. I'll just put 12 drops in. Yeah, it's a lot lighter now, because it is. I've got paranoid now. I'm going to add a bit more transparent. You can't add too much more. About 20% is the most you want to add. Will start to break down after a while if you put too much in. I have used it with 50%. You can get away with it, but it's not particularly fun. So 20 to 30% is normally where I would go with it if I was doing an armoured vehicle like a German one, and I want to have some subtle fading on the panels, which is what I use it for typically. And you've got those sort of mono colour schemes. I use it on a Sherman as well with some olive green stuff. And just not sure if that's coming through either. Can you see that? It is there. No, you can sort of see from that angle. Fairly subtle. I'm not a huge fan of weathering aircraft to bits, unless I can see that the prototype was like that. Subtlety is a bit more fun. I'm not worried about this having a bit of a satin sheen, by the way. And if you're wondering what's caused that, it's a combination of the transparator and with the base colour it was the Vallejo flow improver. If you put a bit of that in there, it can react and cause your finish to go a bit satin. That doesn't really worry me because ultimately it's going to get clear coated anyway. And what I'm doing now is just going over that And because I've already done it once, I'm just picking up certain panels and giving them another go. And so effectively I end up with 3 different shades of brightness. I think that's where the starts to work. And as you can see, you don't have to use lacquer paints to get this technique to work. You just got to dial in the thinning ratios and work your way from there. I think the transparenter helps a bit too, because that allows you to layer it a bit better. And obviously half decent airbrush helps. That's really subtle. I mean, I can definitely control that quite well. So if it doesn't look good, that's my fault. It's not the technique. So you can see the modelling now. I think it's coming through on the camera a bit. That's enough. I don't want it to look too worn. That's good enough for me. So I'll put that aside. That'll let that dry for about, I don't know, 8 hours, 12 hours, and then I can come back in and put a gloss coat over it. I won't put the gloss coat on camera because, I mean, it's just me painting gloss. But just for the case, to finish up this video, I'll show you what I'm going to do with it. I've got some Tamiya gloss here, which I've already pre-thinned. It's in another brand bottle, but that's what it is. It's Tamiya gloss. Again, that gloss has been sitting around for ages, and I thought I've got to start using it. So I'll put that on as a gloss when I get to that point. And what else am I going to use? When it comes to varnishing, I've got decals on stuff. I'm going to use this VMS varnish, satin varnish for the top coat, because it works well with oil paints. At this point though, really what I've got to do is just let that dry. Then I can come back tomorrow, and the next video you'll see me doing the canopy framing, putting the canopy on, a little bit of paint here, just where around here where the canopy fits around, putting in the gun sight obviously, which isn't there yet, and taking this out, and then getting this all masked up ready to put the base grey colour on the top surfaces, and doing something a bit similar to what we've just done there. Alright, that's it for this video. Hopefully there was something in there of use to you. Thanks everyone for watching, and yeah, let me know if you like these live streams, if they're actually something you find interesting, or if you still prefer just to have the 20-minute edited versions. Just curious. I sort of put a bit more content into these as far as explaining what I'm doing, so just wondering whether that's something people find interesting. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next stream. As soon as I figure out how to stop it. There's a button somewhere. There we go.